But let's get to this story, which was kind of teased that this was going to happen. At least they're going to look at it. This is for a lot of coaches who are on the bounce back, who have been head coaches or even high school coaches who wanted to move up into college football, and it's the analyst job. But the analyst job is not where you are allowed to recruit, and you're not allowed to have on or like in practice coaching. Today, Ross Dellinger with this story, NCAA proposal to permit all staff to give coaching, instruction, practice, and games. In a memo to the NCAA, outside consultants coaching, satellite offices, recruiting-only coaches. The proposal is on pace to be voted on in May. Here is what, Paul, they can do, Craig, they can do. In football, question, may any institutional staff member provide technical and tactical instruction, signal plays, call plays, conduct drills to a student athlete? The answer is yes. What has that answer been before?
No.
No. So that's something that's up for proposal. And that, again, would allow coaches, and Gary Patterson's the local example, and he was at Texas after his time for a long time, his success for the longest of time until the end it kind of ran into a little bit of proverbial brick wall when he was the head coach at TCU.
I'm sure that there's a lot of practical uses where this would be good. I'm sure you'd love to have Gary Patterson be able to get in and coach players, as opposed to just taking notes and then going to Dave Aranda and going, here's my notes, I'll see you tomorrow, kind of a thing. But I do think that there's a nice little, firewall if you're like, oh, listen, I appreciate your input, but you can't talk. So it keeps the voices a little bit low. But look, if they're doing a lot of this stuff, it's one of those things where a lot of it is probably happening anyway. So, and it's tough to, do something for so long and coach and then be out there watching and see something go wrong and then just have to sit there silently and not go coach. So it's probably one of those things that just happens, and then they're like, well, it probably happened so much that it's not worth it. And also with recruiting, this all goes back around to that. Like, how much can you use a guy to recruit at any advantage you can get? So I wouldn't be surprised if this is what's really driving that ship.
Well, I mean, there's been demand for expanded staffs and demand for it. I mean, you see how they get one little opening and it turns into 20 former head coaches serving as analysts in Tuscaloosa, or and I'm obviously a little bit of hyperbole there, but
no, that's where a lot of it went from 1 to 10 or 20, and then everyone else tried to follow suit.
Yeah, so I think it's welcome news for those who want to see an expansion of that role, and I don't know how much of a game changer it is, but obviously if you suddenly have Gary Patterson over across the street able to coach defense hands-on and actually get out there and do what a normal coach would be doing, that's certainly better than him just sitting to the side, not allowed to talk to many of the players during the course of the practice, besides just, kind of small talk or maybe a thing here and there. He's got to be hands-off and just basically sit back and take notes. Now, the only thing with that is it's great the rules change, but then also wouldn't his contract change? Isn't he suddenly going to be probably getting paid a lot more money to do the hands-on, on-the-field instruction as opposed to the analyst off-field, off-hands instruction? So, I don't know what appetite staffs will have for how many of these analyst jobs might get a little more pricey and expensive because the roles expand. But I do think it's welcome news for those who have had those roles and for those coaches who want to have as many great analysts as possible to help build their team. That's something that's certainly going to, I think, be seen at most of the top schools where these trends start and kind of build up and turn into what they turn into, like Alabama, as we were talking about. But, yeah, I think it's welcome news and something that's been talked about for quite a while now.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what Bob Shipley, when he was the head coach at Belton, the Shipley brothers' father, but I thought that it was like $75,000 or $50,000 to $75,000. He was going to retire. He had already set himself up to be successful with his retirement. But, I don't know. I don't know what that salary would be. How much? It would be a question for Mac Rhodes when we have him on sometime, whenever that is in May.
You're basically an assistant coach.
Yeah, no. Yeah, you are now. In some ways, because you still can't do this. Question. In football, may any institutional staff member contact or evaluate prospective student athletes off campus? In other words, there were 9 coaches on staff. that could go off campus and recruit. Then there were 10. That was added. And you couldn't do that as an analyst, and you still can't do that. You can still coach now. You can get your hands in it, but you cannot recruit or conduct any kind of visits with any prospective student athletes.
Sounds like a dream gig for
Yeah,
guys who actually want to coach.
positive, yeah.
I know there's recruiters out there. There's some guys who are more recruiter than they are coach, and vice versa. But I would think for those who don't really care about recruiting, or it gives them a headache like it does a lot of folks, especially nowadays, that'd be great news. Oh, I'm just coaching and just dealing with the team on a day-to-day basis? Sign me up. I don't have to go and worry about flips and all that kind of jazz. Just worry about who's here on campus. I think that'd be mighty enticing for a number of people.
Kim Coulter, Craig nailed it, but it didn't go far enough. This is just another advantage for the SEC Big Ten.
Of course. Yeah.
Schools will have over the Big 12, ACC, and others as it comes back to the P2 having twice the money of the Big 12 schools and, of course, others in the ACC.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I didn't go far enough, and exactly right. That'll get exploited just like the analyst, iteration before that to what we were talking about with Alabama, and that will be every single thing imaginable that they can exploit and build up and get in more and more and more advantages. That's going to be, that's the history of college sports, college football in many cases anyways. I mean, there's always been bending of the rules and exploiting and things like that, but it's just so much more glaring now because of the big gap that we all talk about. But certainly when you have an extra $40 million to play around with on a year-to-year basis, you're going to go have Gary Patterson as your defensive analyst, coordinator, special assistant to the head coach, who's actually able to work at practices, in addition to your other defensive coordinator, in addition to your former NFL coach who's the assistant to the linebackers coach, and so on and so forth. So, you're absolutely right that's just going to create more situations like that and not really a whole layer on the piece of bread on the toast. It's not going to be spread evenly by any means.
Extra peanut butter and jelly.
And look, they've got this extra money, and they're going to spend it like a meth head who won the lottery. So it's going to be nuts. It's not like you're going to take the money and be like, well, we got $40 million extra. Let's put that in a nice IRA.
Right.
Let's put that
They
in
might
a nice,
need to do that to pay back the NCAA lawsuit at some point.
Maybe so. But they're going to spend the money, and they're going to get every advantage that they can possibly get. So, these coaches are going to coach. These coaches are going to recruit. One of the things that put the rule on the cap of staff sizes was Nick Saban essentially had like a Malaysian phone bank of people recruiting, all the time, where they were just, okay, hey, let's call, because there's no limit. And then the other schools are like, well, we can't do that.
Speaking of which, the question, may an institution employ an individual who will be involved with recruiting or evaluating prospective student athletes if the individual does not reside in the institution's general locale? Answer, no. Such an individual would be considered an athletics talent scout. Per NCAA bylaw, the number, an institution may not employ an individual who will be involved with recruiting or evaluating prospective student athletes if the individual does not reside in the general locale.
Well,
so in other words, in Waco, you can't live like, for example, in Tampa and be working for Baylor when it comes to being a part of the staff that is contacting student athletes.
They'll figure that out soon enough, too.
I think that's happening, too, yeah.
But that's not really a hard thing to do. All they have to do, and maybe this was going to be like how it is where, somebody has a P.O. box or, just rent them an apartment here in the place and then be like, listen, and then they rent them an apartment in Tampa and be like, you're our Florida guy, but, you got to spend at least this much time here in Waco. And so during the recruiting dead period, here it's easy. I've already found a way for you to break this rule. During the recruiting dead periods, of which there are several, you come back here and we do paperwork and we figure out where you're going to go next. And then during the recruiting open periods, you go live in Miami, where that's where you really
There's no talent in Miami, Paul. There's all the talent.
So, I'm sorry for the next NCAA rule I just broke, but I just figured out how to break it pretty damn fast.
I think they've already known that.
Yeah.
But it's a great idea.
Yeah.
All right, so there we are with that.